Hello, this is just an introduction to group theory. This is not anything to do with pre-calculus. This is just for a future math class that you might take. So you can have two different types of groups. You can have multiplicative groups and you can have additive groups. Both groups have these four properties. So both multiplicative groups and additive groups have these four properties. So you have to be associative, you have to have an inverse, you have to have an identity, and you have to have closure. So if you have these four properties, then you either have a multiplicative group or you have an additive group. Let me show you a multiplicative group that you should be aware of. So if we were to let I equal the square root of -1, you would have covered this in Math 105 college algebra and maybe even before. And I do my i's like this so that they don't look like the number 1. So if we let I equal square root of 1, you can square both sides. So let's put this over here on the side because we're going to build a handful of these. Okay, so square both sides and you get I squared is equal to a -1. Okay, so we'll put that over here as well. I squared equals -1. This is I to the first power. Okay, and then if you multiply both sides by I again, you get I cubed equals -I. And I'll put this over here as well. Okay, and then if you multiply both sides by I again, when you multiply same bases, you're going to add their exponents. So this would give you I to the fourth on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, this -I times I, this would give you -I squared. But we said over here that I squared is -1. So this tells us that I to the fourth is equal to -1, and that implies that I to the fourth is equal to a +1. Put this over here as well. So we have I to the fourth equals 1. If you multiply both sides by I again, this implies that I to the fifth is equal to I. Which is this right here. And then if you multiply both sides by I again, we have I to the sixth is equal to I squared, but I squared is -1. And we are repeating. So I can bring all of these i's into a collection. We can write that with braces I squared, I cubed, and I to the fourth power. And this forms a group. Now I can make this even more compact. I can write this as I with the inequalities on both sides. This is a generator. What this is saying is this will generate I. It just depends upon how many times you want to multiply this item by itself. And that will give you all of the elements in this group. So looking at this, so let's see if this is associative. It is associative because any of those elements, you can rearrange them. So I squared plus I cubed is I cubed plus I squared. It's associative. Okay. Does it have an inverse? In other words, does there exist for an inverse? So an additive inverse is if two elements, A and B, sum up to 0. because 0 is the additive identity. This is a multiplicative group. And in a multiplicative group, we have A times B equals, we're going to call E the identity because there are an infinite amount of different multiplicative identities. And this one here in particular, we have two elements that give us a product that equals 1. And yes, we have 2 such elements in our group. So if this is our group, a product of 2 of these that give you 1. Well, times this by itself twice, you get 1. Times these 2 by itself, you get 1. I times I cubed is I to the 4th. I to the 4th is 1. Okay, so it has the inverse. How about the identity? So the identity is if if there exists an element in the group that when you A times that element does not change A, then the identity exists in the group. And this identity is I to the 4th, because I to the 4th is 1. 1 times anything is still 1. It doesn't not change anything. So yes, this has the identity. Does it have closure? So closure. If your group, doesn't matter what you call this, let's call it G. So let G be a group, and let A be an element in G, and B be an element in G. If the product of A times B is in G, then you have closure under multiplication. So if our group, let's call our group G. So 2 elements in here that when multiplied, you're still in here. Any one of the 2. If we multiply these first 2, we get I cubed. If we multiply the first and the third, we get I to the 4th. If we multiply 2 and 3, so I squared times I cubed, well, this would give you I to the 5th. But I to the 5th is I to the 4th times I. I to the 4th is 1. This gives you I. So if I were to multiply I squared times I cubed, I get I. There it is. It's in the group. Any product of these 2 elements will still fit in that group. If I multiply these 2, I cubed times I to the 4th, you get I to the 7th. I to the 7th is I cubed. Okay, so this has closure. It has all 4 properties that makes this a multiplicative group. Well, just a little sharing with you. Math really is a beautiful, wonderful field. Take care.